Good morning, beautiful world and beautiful shiny souls. I am back. Yesterday, I did not make it on here to record because it's another not super sleepy night, and we all slept in. I think we slept in until like 8, which is bananas for me. And then we had a family day, and we spent our day at our town's pumpkin festival, and we went not once but twice, and the kids got their faces painted, and they did Jedi training, and it was all beautiful and wonderful and exhausting. And so this morning, I don't think they're up yet, and it is almost time for school, so we might be going in late to school because I dare not wake them up when they have not been sleeping and they're so exhausted, because exhaustion and crankiness is not good for learning. But it brought up this idea of rest, and I've been wanting to talk about rest some because when I was still practicing as a healthcare provider, I used to see patients all of the time who would tell me, I am not one of those people who needs a lot of sleep. Like, I can get by on 3 hours, or I can get by on 4 hours, or like I could get by on some insane, minuscule amount of sleep. People working 2 and 3 jobs, people who, right, like they wake up during the night and then they just stay up and they clean the house, and they feel like if they have energy, they need to be productive. And the thing is, there are no people who can get by on minimal sleep. Like, this has actually been studied, and there is a minimal amount of sleep you need to function. And it is 6 hours. And some people need more than 6 hours, but 6 hours is the minimum, my friends. So I'm sorry to anyone who I have shattered illusion or dreams for. And here's the other thing that we know. We know that if you are consistently getting fewer than 6 hours of sleep, that you are impaired. You cannot function well. You are not fit to drive a car. So it goes without saying that parenting is probably not served well. And you also have about as much insight about your impairment as someone who is drunk. So that is my public service announcement today. If you are consistently getting fewer than 6 hours of sleep, you are functioning at the equivalent of perhaps a functional alcoholic. So when we put it in those terms, right, we can see how harmful, right, because this is not a shamey judgment thing. We're seeing how harmful this culture of, right, hustle over sleep, productivity over sleep, I'll rest when I'm dead. Well, dead may come sooner if you're not resting. And also quality of life, not so great. I know for me, right, just how much harder life is when I do not rest. And I'm not saying this is somebody who gets my 6+ hours, and I'm not somebody who can make it on 6 hours, right? I'm somebody who needs the 8 hours, sometimes 9 hours. Like, sleep is sacred to me. There are not many things I value more than getting adequate sleep. And that is because I have noticed the difference. Like, when I do not get decent sleep, it is really hard for me to function. It's hard to concentrate. It is hard to stay in my heart. Like, I'm like ping-ponging back up into my head, and my thoughts spin, and like my emotional regulation is in the toilet. Like, I get into this not enoughness, scarcity space, and it's just, I'm getting better in terms of, right, like being 7 years into parenting, being able to recognize like, oh, that's not me. This is what exhaustion feels like, right? This is not who I am. This is me being exhausted, and this is how exhaustion manifests in my body. And, you know, if you are somebody who has a lot of air, then exhaustion probably manifests similarly for you. If you're someone who has a lot of fire, chances are you get really irritable when you are not well rested. And then you think that you're just a jerk. When in reality, it could be you need more sleep. I had a patient once who had undiagnosed sleep apnea. And as part of our workup for surgery, we used to make sure people who had risk factors for sleep apnea got tested. And she got fitted with a CPAP machine, which is a machine that basically forces air into your airways when you sleep so that you are not collapsing your airway and getting hypoxic at night, right? You can imagine where that would be disruptive to sleep, right? So if your airway is collapsing repeatedly and then your body is releasing stress hormones because you are not getting any air to like jolt you awake, so you gasp for air and get some air in so you don't die in your sleep, you know, your body trying to help you out here. And yeah, she was like, I didn't realize, but everybody's telling me how much nicer I am now, that I am a much more pleasant human. And I didn't realize what a grouch I was previously, right? Like, I didn't realize how irritable I was all of the time because my sleep quality was garbage. And that's kind of an extreme example, but yeah, just wanting to touch base about how important like rest really is. And if you can't get 6 hours a night, right? Like, because maybe you legitimately do need to work 2 or 3 jobs, or, you know, you're in the early years of parenting, especially like the really early years where sleep is like, if you get consecutive hours, it's a major win. Then it's getting rest where you can, right? Not all rest needs to look like deep sleep. Sometimes it's just giving yourself a break. Sometimes it's taking a few grounding breaths here and there. Sometimes it's committing to not do things while your kids are napping and just rest with them, because, like, let's be honest, when we find our real people, they don't care that our houses are messy. They just want our company. Right. And now I'm at a stage in my life where I go to somebody's house where they have children and the house is a mess, or somebody who, because we, not by coincidence, hang out with a lot of endurance athletes and people who are doing Ironman training, and then their grass isn't cut and their houses aren't like vacuumed and straightened up. And like my response to that is, wow, these people can come over. These people can come over because they're okay with not putting on the pretend act, right? The pretend act that everything is immaculate all of the time. And like the beautiful thing about endurance athletes is they are not afraid of discomfort, right? Like they're sitting in their stuff. They are sitting in physical discomfort. And so, like, that's its own type of meditation, and facing your demons and your shadow, right? Doing that really regularly. Like, they are some of the kindest people I know. And I did endurance sports, right? I trained for an Ironman. It took me years to build up to that before I found out I was pregnant. And once I had kids, like, I couldn't use that as my coping mechanism anymore. I couldn't go run in the woods for an entire day to regulate my nervous system. And that is when I found breathwork and meditation. I found it because I was trying to find ways to help my patients. And like, that is the beauty of healing work, is in your quest to help others, you always end up helping yourself. So yeah, I speak to all of this from experience, not just as a healthcare provider, but from having lived it, that your rest is really important. And in a capitalist culture that measures worth based on productivity, rest is resistance, right? Rest is an act of resistance, choosing yourself, choosing self-care. And I mean the most basic of self-care, right? Food, sleep, water, right? Hydration, stillness, those are all really rebellious things to be doing when you're told that you need to define your worth by your productivity. And the thing is, I have done that, right? Like, I have done the productivity. I've done all of the high achieving. I went to an Ivy League school. I got a high paying job. I did all of the things that I was supposed to do to be really fulfilled in this life. And what I found is that I felt like I was beating my head against a wall every day because I was constantly told that everything I was doing was not enough. And even when I had amazing reviews from my patients and I was like helping people transform their lives, and it was, well, why can't you do that in 15 minutes without a medical assistant and a check-in person, right? It was never, we appreciate you. It was always, why can't you do more? And so my question is, who benefits? Right? Who benefits from me running myself into the ground? My patients aren't benefiting, right? That's how they try to market it. Oh, it's an access issue. We need to be able to see more people. The wait times for people to get an appointment with you are too long. And I'm like, well, we've been telling you that we have needed an additional person for months now. Like, you've known for over a year that we had the patient volume to hire an additional provider, but instead you've been trying to overload all of us to not pay that salary. So that very much sounds like a you problem, right? Because my priority is to show up well for the people who are here. And there is a limit to how much I can do. There is a limit to how much of myself I can give in a day, because the ask was not for me to actually see people in 15 minutes, because that's not even possible. We can't get people into rooms that fast. The ask was for me to see people through my lunch break and see people 2 hours after my workday is closed, right? To run behind, to make everyone wait to be seen, and then to try to repair all of those relationships, because we're all just cogs in a wheel, even in a system that's supposed to be putting people first. So if that feels like that is also your story, it's probably not a coincidence, because that is the way I think most corporations work, and so much of the world is run by corporations now. And it's, right, it's all a mess. And that is the bad news. And the good news is you could keep the mess on the outside. And that is why we do our practices. And that is why we prioritize rest. And that is why we prioritize taking care of ourselves. Because nothing is going to change while we're all still propping up the broken system, and while we're all still participating in it, and while we are all exhausted and siloed, right, disconnected, because it takes energy to people. And it takes energy to connect with ourselves, right? I cannot connect with myself when I am completely depleted and I am sleep deprived. And that is all by design. And the good news is you get to opt out of that, right? And maybe you can't overhaul your life overnight, but you can make little 10-degree turns toward where you want to be. And that starts with maybe getting some rest where you can and finding some joy where you can. All right. I love you. Good morning. Have a great day.